Small but nimble could be the description of my guest, but it is in fact how she describes her business. Intrigued? Good. The entrepreneur I'm chatting to today is vibrant, talented, and incredibly creative, and someone who I have had the pleasure of working with recently. It is brand designer Andrea Boughton, who's founder of the brand and design studio Beehive Green. Now, after university, she worked locally designing magazines before making the move to a London communications agency. This is where she honed her talent and expanded her creativity. Working her way up to senior designer, she found herself more and more interested in the detailed brand guidelines that came in from the big brand clients she worked with. Her fascination with brand design turned into helping friends and family with their branding projects. As she says, it was a side hustle to help them with their side hustles. But it wasn't until she started a family 8 years later that Andrea decided it was time to say goodbye to London. Long days and long commutes, and instead immersed herself in motherhood and enjoying spending time, as she says, making memories with her 2 children before they started school. Fast forward once more. This time she's waving her kids off in the playground, and Andrea is ready to get her creative juices flowing again. Wanting flexibility in her working day, she dusted off her Mac, set up a home studio, and Beehive Green was born. Andrea's mission is to help ambitious, independent businesses shine bright. Because she says brilliant businesses deserve brilliant branding design, whether they're big or small, old or new. And for the record, I totally agree with her. I am so delighted to welcome Andrea Boughton for a chat with me, with Tracy today, and learn more about her entrepreneurial journey and how she keeps Beehive Green shining bright. Andrea, welcome to the With Tracy podcast.
Thank you, Tracy. It's lovely to be here, and thank you for asking me to join you.
Oh no, it's brilliant, and I'm just so happy to have kind of come across you, connected with you, and worked with you. And as you know, I'm a great fan, so I'm very excited to have you on the show today.
It was lovely working with you as well. Really get to know each other really well that way, don't you?
Yeah, totally. And I know there's going to be lots in the future, so I'm excited about that. So for my listeners out there, I always like to give a bit of background and a bit of history on my guest, you know, where it all started or where you started out, for instance. So, Andrea, here we go. Over to you.
Well, I'm from Hertfordshire, which is where I'm still living now, in fact. Always drawing, reading, creativity was a big thing for me when I was young. I was always drawing, always. And I think I had that work ethic from quite a young age as well, from the, the obligatory paper round at 13 to Saturday job in a newsagent. When I was that age, I worked all the way through university until I, started working in the design world once I graduated. So I think I always had that work ethic. So being able to kind of combine that with the creative side of things, has been a real joy for me.
Andrea, were your parents creative? What kind of inspired you at a really early age to sort of?
Not at all. I've actually got an aunt who's very creative, and I do remember they moved. So they were based in London, and they moved down to Devon and started up a guest house. But me and my aunt would write to each other, and she'd send me letters with lots of little illustrations in them. She'd do little drawings of things in the letters, and I'd write back to her. But she was always, creative, crafty as well, like making things, doing things. But my mum and dad, not at all. Brother, not at all. No, nobody else. So it's like, well, I do seem to have passed it on to my daughter. But just enjoyed drawing. I did lots of it. I can remember illustrating stories at school, and we do like stories which were whole school exercise books with drawings throughout them. So there was obviously something about it that I enjoyed doing. And obviously art, creativity, it's one of those things you think, how can I make it into a career and actually make it, you know, a viable way to earn money at the end of it? So yeah, I'm glad I've managed to do that.
But you did. So you obviously did that through school and university and everything. And then did you say when we talked earlier, did you say you sort of started designing magazines? Was that locally before you moved to London?
Yeah. Well, it was really when, so in between university and doing A-levels, one of which was art, to go on to anything like art-based, the route is you do something called an art foundation course, which is a 1-year course, and you do lots of taster of lots of different art disciplines, from fine art, photography, sculpture, all kinds of things. And it was there that I really first did graphic design, and it was the kind of combination of ideas and images and words to kind of convey a message that really appealed to me. It kind of got your brain ticking, as well as creativity as well. So I think it's quite a competitive industry, design. There's lots of people, you know, wanting to get into design. You know, there was then, there still is now. It's probably harder now even what it was then. But, you know, it's just a case of getting your foot in the door somewhere, which I managed to do locally at publishing company who literally published the regional newspapers, but they also did some regional magazines, and it was a great place, really small design studio where we created adverts and kind of little ad hoc pieces of design work, as well as layouts, editorial design, magazine design. But kind of a couple of years there was really enough to be ready for the next challenge, to be honest. So from there, the next,
a good place to sort of cut your teeth, really, isn't it? And just sort of
brilliant,
working.
It was ideal, and getting used to working with different people, doing things in a practical way. You know, learn a lot about the practicalities of actually print and things like that, which kind of not quite as big now, obviously, because like the digital has come on in the last 20 plus years. But yeah, it was really good to have that practical knowledge and understanding, and getting used to working with other teams, like editorial teams, advertising teams, all these different things. So just to get in there. But being so close to London, based in Hertfordshire, it is really easy to commute. So that just seemed the next big step, really, having it on my doorstep. So really involved, as it used to be in those days, trawling around loads of places, carrying a really heavy portfolio. Nothing was online. It's a big meaty portfolio on the train. And yeah, I ended up working at a creative communications agency, and that agency specialised in doing staff and customer publications, magazines, newsletters, for basically all sorts of brands. So people from Sainsbury's to Princess Trust, Network Rail, and I was part of the design team there, and we used to have an editorial team. But it was quite interesting because we got to account manage as well. So some publications might be design only, and it might be written in-house by an in-house team, and in that case you'd be our account manager as well. Some of them we did both, some were just editorial. So it was quite different, and we'd work across a range of things. And obviously a big part of the job there was to pitch for new work as well, which is where we'd kind of be given some brand guidelines and a kind of brief for a publication, who it's for, and we'd design layouts and content and have to go along and present it, and kind of jumping on the train all over the place to go and do that. So that was fun and really creative to be part of, and just the whole agency environment, really.
And it sounds, I mean, I know you were there for 8 years, so
yeah,
I can get a sense of what you're saying, but you know, because there were lots of different aspects to it, it kind of kept you interested, as well as your creativity sort of moving and having to do different things.
Yeah,
right.
I think that's right. Yeah, because if you're on one publication for 8 years, I think after you've done a few issues, it kind of becomes a little bit repetitive. Although there's lots of challenges, like a lot of it is picture research, finding the right images as well, and also commissioning photographers, things that have kind of seen me through well to today. So it's not just design, lots of the account management side, but actually always working on new fresh accounts and pitches made it really interesting. it was a really fun time, and I'm still in touch with a lot of colleagues there, and actually a lot of them are working independently now, or have gone off to start their own agencies as well. So it's quite interesting where we've all gone. It's obviously put us in good stead.
So anyway, so you kind of got intrigued, or you kind of got more and more excited about branding, design, and everything. And then you say you started a family, and then once your children had gone to school, you thought, right, I've got to get back. I've got to be doing something. But you wanted that flexibility. So it wasn't quite a light bulb moment then. It was something that you've been considering a while.
No, it wasn't intentional at all. I never really saw myself working for myself. Although looking back at it, my family are quite entrepreneurial in that sense, owning their own businesses and things. So maybe it was in me, but you know, I was quite a privileged position, I guess, to be able to take a bit of a gap to bring up my children when they're young. I wanted to make the most of it. That time goes extremely quickly, as you know. But yeah, that obviously came that point where I wanted to get back to doing my own thing. I had been doing a little bit of freelance work here and there, but I wanted to kind of immerse myself back in. So naturally, the first thing I did was actually look at the job market and look what it was about. But then actually being so close to London kind of acted against me, because all the jobs were in London, and I didn't want that, you know, extra hour commute either side, making it such a long day. And I wanted flex, like you say, for family life. I wanted to be able to be there. So I just thought I'd give it a go, really, and put some feelers out. Managed to randomly, you know, sometimes picking up clients through odd places, like a Zumba class, and that's actually one of the clients I still work with. It wasn't actually for a Zumba class, but just someone who also went to the class. So it's just funny how you connect with people and get. So yeah, it just started ticking off, and I'd say I was in a quite privileged position because I hadn't been working for a few years, that I was able to start quite slowly and gradually build it up. Where I think it comes differently if you're, you know, you're earning a salary and you want to match that, or you've got, you know. So I think I was quite lucky. It meant less pressure starting out that way. But I wasn't quite convinced how it was going to pan out, and I didn't really see myself here. It was 9 years later this month, actually, since I started working independently. So yeah, it obviously worked.
Well, I mean, there it says, you know, there's you know, something to be said about actually you took your time, you didn't rush it, you worked at it slowly, got a feel of it, you know, what it was like working for yourself, and that you could survive. And it's so, in a way, it's been a nice organic involvement rather than you rushed into it having these big expectations straight away. So good for you, 9 years. That's fantastic.
Yeah. It's allowed me to really hone in as well. Like I say, from a publishing background, that wasn't really what I wanted to carry on doing. I wanted to do something that I could, with a bit more variety, working with more different businesses. And I'd done a bit of brand identity work, and I think one of the things I could see with a lot of small businesses, that the same values, not placed on brand, but I really know the value a brand brings to an organisation. And it's, you know, it's really quite transformational. So I wanted to kind of make that a little bit more accessible and give people, I guess, higher expectations of what they could achieve, because it doesn't mean because you're small and local, or, you know, that you have to have something that's not good. You know, there's lots of things that you can do really well, and you haven't got so many necessary stakeholders to have to kind of align with. You know, you've got much more kind of autonomy to go forward things. So it's really nice working with founders. I do work with bigger teams as well, but yeah, it's nice working directly with founders and change makers, people that make a difference.
Well, you know, my experience has been, you know, if you get great creativity and great brand design, people are wowed. And I think very few people get that opportunity to be wowed, you know, but that certainly is what you did for me recently. So that's why, you know, I just love it. So it's just fantastic. Now, but what I have to ask you, Andrea, is, come on, I like a bit of history, finding out, you know, why people name their businesses, what they name them. So come on, where does Beehive Green come from?
I get asked this a lot, actually. It is the name of actually the place where the road I was living in when I founded my studio. But I knew, obviously, I wanted something that was going to have longevity, and I knew I probably wouldn't be living in that street forever. But it was really, the words themselves that had meaning to me. So just like a beehive, my studio thrives on collaboration. So obviously collaborating with the people I'm working for, but also I kind of have a bit of a collective approach to projects. So while I'm a kind of a creative studio of one, I do team up with other creatives that generally offer different services to me. So that might be, a copywriter or a photographer. So we team up. So that kind of collaborative thing was really important. So that's where the beehive came from. And originally I was thinking of just going with something like that, but I just wanted something a little bit more, I suppose, a little bit more unique, really. So I decided to go the whole lot. And the green is really relevant as well because it does represent freshness and vitality and growth. And that is exactly what branding and design does. It helps reinvigorate, the businesses that I work with. So that's really where, and also now it feels extra relevant because I'm kind of niching down a bit more on working with positive impact brands. So brands are trying to put people and the planet up there with profit. So that Beehive Green just really feels right for that, just almost unintentionally again. But yeah, I really love the name and it's worked really well for me. People seem to remember it as well. It's easy to say. So that's, always a good thing.
Yeah, no, I always love getting a bit of background on business names. I'm always intrigued, and especially from someone who is an expert branding.
Yeah, I say it's a tough one finding a name, isn't it? Finding a name that you can use as well, that's got a domain able for registration, that's not trademarked. So it is quite a thing finding a name. It's good to be. I did actually start out just using my name, but it never felt quite right to me. So I very quickly, decided to go with a studio name, and it just means that the people I work with, we're all kind of working to the same ethos. Yeah. It suits the collective approach.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great. I love it. So, Andrea, what was it like? I when people have been in like the corporate arena and they've been an employee, and then I know you had the gap. You were looking after your children, but what sort of differences did you feel or find moving from I've got a team behind me, I've got support, to it's just me. I'm responsible for everything.
It's really daunting at first, really daunting. Every time you think about something, you realise how many more hats you need to wear to do what you do, really. It's probably half the time is spent doing the non-design, non-creative stuff. You've got everything from accounts to marketing, everything in between. So that's quite daunting, getting to grips with all that, a lot to learn. And the time it all takes, sort of taking that into account. And actually, I didn't really have any experience of that, having worked for you'd have different people doing different roles. So it's been a lot of learning, and I'm not going to lie, it's yet more learning. I think you're always learning, isn't there? Because there's always better ways, things you can do to improve things. So I think it's just the balancing of wearing many hats, and obviously the longer I've been operating, the more I've been able to outsource bits and pieces as well. And I think the sooner you can invest and free up some time, that's a massive help. So yeah.
So on the back of that, then, I'd like to ask you, what have been the biggest challenges for you as a business owner?
I think it's lack of time, to be honest. I really do think it's lack of time. As a mum doing this in limited time, I have obviously built up the hours that I do over time. But yes, trying to work out how and when to do all those other roles as well, or how you're going to achieve those. I think that's the biggest sort of ongoing challenge, really, because I haven't got any intention of growing into an agency. I like this small direct approach. I obviously I've worked in an agency, but I know through my progression in the agency, the more senior you get, you end up kind of managing people and not actually getting your hands dirty. And that's actually what I like doing. So I get support, I have a VA who helps with bookkeeping and some admin bits and pieces and all those kind of things that I can get a bit of help with. Apart from that, it's just me. But I think as well, that's being mindful of the projects that you take on and work on have got to be things that really, give you joy, that you really want to do. There's, I'll talk more about that later, I'm sure. But yeah, so I guess trying to be disciplined is the biggest challenge, really. Always learning on that one.
So I know you don't have to give any of your trade secrets away, but I'm always intrigued. So you've had the brief, you've spoken to your new client, and and it's that day one where you think, right, I'm going to start working on this project. What is it for you? Do you have a certain routine? Are there things that you look at first? I'm just kind of intrigued.
Yeah, I've definitely got a bit of a tried and tested process. Obviously, that will vary from type of project and how in depth it needs to be for the different type of client that I'm working with, what information I'm supplied with in a brief. But generally, the first bit of a project is the kind of discovery, getting to know, and then research, because I need to go and have a look at who else is out there doing what you do, because I want your brand to be differentiated. I want it to kind of stand out. Other kind of relevant benchmark brands. So I do a lot of research, and that's from, obviously I've got stuff almost in my head that anyway, out and about. There's online resources as well. Places like Pinterest are good for getting some visual references. But when it actually comes to getting the creative going, I get my sketchbook out and I do a sketch. So that's always the first point before I do anything. Yeah. Also, logo design is one of the things, obviously, for that. You just sketch out, and that just helps you kind of get ideas really quickly, get a feel for what might work, and then what you can develop to the next stage, but also kind of cross stuff out. If it's not going to work, there's no point in progressing it to that next stage. So real sort of quick, sketchy, scamping stage until you land on something you think, actually, this is worth then developing further. And that's when I jump onto the Mac and start, going to Illustrator and actually start drawing.
About this, Andrea, are you literally in your home studio, or is it the sort of thing you might take yourself off on a walk and take your sketchbook with you or something like that? Or can you literally just sit down and think, right, I'm just gonna focus and doodle? And
you know what, it's not something you can, when you come up with ideas, you can just like, right, today I'm gonna bang out a logo, because it doesn't really work like that, or not for me, it doesn't. So I think you're always thinking about the project. You might sit down and start, scamping out ideas, but that'll be something I won't just account. I'll do a little bit over a few days, or there'll be breaks in between, and then you might get that aha moment while you're walking the dog, in the shower, one of those. But you can't necessarily. I mean, I've got loads of books behind me as well, because it's not like a maths equation where 1 and 1 is 2. There's not one right solution. So it's your interpretation, but you've got to obviously keep the audience and the brief and the brand strategy in mind, so it all aligns. So they're kind of parameters to work within. But yeah, I definitely think you need a bit of a space during the kind of creative process. You can't, sometimes it does just happen really quickly. You get an idea and it is almost like the one, but more often than not it requires some sketching, some going away, working on something else. So I find it quite interesting when I see some designers sort of doing the design in a day service and things like that, because for me, that just wouldn't work. I'd need to do all the research and bits and get to really know and understand a brand. But I do feel you need to let something sit, and at different stages through the process, because, just having that space seems to kind of allow a bit of room for new ideas to come through, and just to look back, actually, just a new way of doing things, a different way to develop it. So I think building in space is an important thing. But yeah, sketching before you digitize anything, looking at what's out there. It's anything from in Tesco's and you see some packaging on a shelf or something, it could be all sorts of things, really. Obviously, social media is a big inspiration now. There's so much stuff shared to galleries. So you always have a bit of a visual library in your head, really. And you kind of get a feel for a brand. I think that approach might be right for them. And then it's, developing it. So.
But, what you're describing to me is the creative process. And I think I do feel that is what's missing quite often. It's that giving that time for those creative juices, creative time to really play around with ideas before you come up with something, rather than just, as you say, oh, we can do that in a day. Well, that's not really giving it the creativity. That to me is not true creativity. But it's really interesting to hear you say that, and I that's great. So busy lady, it sounds like you did have a bit of a challenge, but you structure your day pretty well. You come across as very organized.
Good.
So what do you do to unwind though, Andrea? Because you've got your family to run, your business to run. It takes up a lot of time.
It does. I've got to admit, I don't have an awful lot of free time. I'm a mum to 2 teens. So, when I'm not working, I tend to be taxi servicing them somewhere. But, there's things I make space for every day. I've got a dog who's laying behind me now. So I have to get her out every day. And we're kind of quite lucky where I live. We sort of border town countryside. So we go across the field. So I do at least one, probably hour's walk a day, if not 2. I do Pilates a couple of times a week. Always try and make some time for some exercise. But other than that, I don't, I'll try and regular sort of, so I'll try and get out, I guess, of the studio socially once a week, whether that's to meet someone that I'm collaborating with, a networky type thing, or just a friend for a coffee. So I try and escape for of hours or 1 week, but also mindful of not penciling too much in, because then I don't have time to do what I need to do. So it's all a bit of a balance and a bit of a juggle, and I think it changes at different stages as well. I think probably quite a demanding age that the children are at now. Well, it always is, but I used to be able to get them in bed by 7 and have an evening back, but they're teenagers now, so I struggle to get them to bed before me, really. So the evenings are totally gone now. It works, and it's for time. The time, I know from when they were little, the time went quickly, and before you know it, that we'll be on to the next stage as well. So I think you just got to embrace what you've got at the time and make it work for you.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you've got a good balance there. It really does.
Try.
So, Andrea, what's 9 years Beehive Green? Do you have plans for the future, or is it just doing what you do?
Like I've already kind of mentioned, I haven't got any big plans to grow my business, but really, I'm enjoying concentrating on bigger projects now. So I tend to get immersed in projects for a few months at a time. It kind of depends how much implementation of a brand I'm doing. I enjoy the collective approach as well, working with other kind of creatives to bring a project together. So I'm doing much more stuff where I work with a copywriter, and we do like the visual brand and the verbal brand together. So everything's aligning really well. So I want to do more of that. And like I think I mentioned, Pete Brands, who put people and the planet along with purpose as well. So just finished doing a brand identity for quite a fair-sized charity that's yet to launch, so currently top secret, but really enjoy doing that, working with local authority, but also smaller brands that are doing good things, helping people with their health and well-being, like the project that we worked on. Different ethoses of how they do things, so I'm much more conscious of that, and I'm actually doing quite a bit of work for that myself, looking at my carbon offsetting and trying to align with those values of the brands that I want to work with, making sure that I'm walking the walk as well. So I'm much more conscious of that. I think it's really important. So it's the types of projects really that I want to work with. So I'm kind of really concentrating on that.
And would you just like to share, anyone listening, or some people might be viewing as well, I hope so, just how they could contact you, and any contact details you'd like to share?
Well, my website, beehivegreen.com, is a great place, and I'm busy uploading lots of new case studies at the moment, so I try and keep that up to date. And also I'm on Instagram. I'm on there quite a bit. I tend to kind of hang out in stories most days, just sharing some little snippets, and on LinkedIn as well. So they're the two main social media channels that I use. So either of those three places, it would be good to connect.
Brilliant. Thank you. Well, please do, those of you who are listening, it's well worth it. Check out Andrea and what she's up to, and maybe even contact her. So if you've got a great project, business that might fit in with what she'd like to be involved in. Finally, Andrea, I always like to ask my guests if there's one piece, and I do kind of allow two.
Okay, good.
But one piece of advice that you would give anyone listening that might be thinking about setting up their own business.
I would actually just say just go for it, because it wasn't on my radar and I made it work. And there's loads more resources out there now. If someone came to me, I'd happily point them in a direction of few easy resources that I wish I'd have known when I started, but you learn. But I guess the other thing is how important it is to kind of set some boundaries personally. It's very easy to say yes to lots of things, but when you keep doing that, you're blocking yourself out of other opportunities. So actually sometimes it's good to say no, because often that will get you further. You need to make sure everything's aligned with what you want to do.
Well, that is a great piece of advice. That piece about saying you can say no, that's something I learned very early on, that actually it's harder to say no than it is to say yes. And sometimes, especially when we're growing a new business, you want to say yes, all these opportunities come along and you think, I've got to say yes, I've got to say yes, I've got to say yes. And before you know it, you've stretched too far, and it maybe just not right. The infrastructure's not there, all that kind of stuff. So actually it is a stronger thing to say no and be prepared, to make sure you're prepared for the things you want to say yes to. And you can put a timeline. I think that's the other thing. You don't, even if you say no now, it doesn't mean to say it's no forever, does it? It could,
no, exactly.
6 months, a year, or 2 years out. So that's fantastic advice. That's brilliant. Andrea, it's been a real delight. Thank you so much. For everything, but being on with Tracy Podcast today. And please, maybe come back, tell us a bit more. Maybe we could just do something on branding design, and because I think it is such an interesting topic. I really, really do. And I think it's something that people really need to understand, benefit of having really great creative branding design for their business.
That would be brilliant. I'd love that. Thank you, Tracy, for having me. Thank you for asking me to join you. It's been really good fun talking about everything that I do. So obviously it's something that I'm really passionate about. So it's good to share it.
Great. Thank you, my dear.
Thank you.